Alright, we've finished with fire and we're moving on to ice. We've got red mage, which is the cycle of the one we just saw from the fire. Backup, when red mage enters the field, your opponent discards one card. If you control 5 or more backups, your opponent reveals their hand. Select one card from your opponent to discard instead. There's the 2 costs that does the same thing if it's your first backup. I feel there are so many other backups that do the same thing for either cheaper or similar cost.
I don't think this will see play. It's the second best of the cycle because you can play this with Giga Wall to force a discard.
Yeah.
Have a standard unit backup. So if you don't want to play Scholar because you don't want the crystal or you're scared about action, Giga Wall can ramp, you can play this instead and force a discard, hurt their card economy, and develop it your own.
No, that's the only thing I see. But even then, I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's whether you care about the other one or not.
And then this also has to be better than you have to decide you want the standard unit over something like an Edward, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm the same. It's no worries.
Alright. Vice. 3 cost forward 7k. If you control 2 or more jobs vets, Vice gains 2k power and brave. When Vice enters the field, you may pay a crystal. When you do so, search for 1 job vets and add it to your hand. We're seeing a lot of job vets and crystals in this set, I feel, but I don't think it's done anything to really up the synergy of that type of deck. Or at least I can't see it at the moment. I have to look at all of them next to each other, sort of on the table. Again, crystal. You have to have the crystal. It's just a searcher with a crystal. I'm a crystal player and I've been very disappointed with crystals recently. It needs 2 or more. I'm not too hard on this card, honestly. Yeah.
If you wanted to play 4 Weisses in your deck, you could play this as your 4th copy if your deck is tangentially making crystals. Because if it comes in with Narrow on the field, it is a 9k Brave, which is just a big fungus that forces the discard.
I still
and then
think the other Vice is better.
Oh, absolutely. But like you can kind of squint and have this be playable if it wasn't for the name. And maybe you just play a copy of this for like early game, and then like late game, that way you can, because like you can have issues sometimes in Ice Lightning where you run out of Weisses. And like this could be your first Weiss if you don't want to play. Like maybe you have like you want to go like Restrictor, Narrow, Cisne, and you just don't want to search a Weiss to discard. You can search for a copy instead. And then like this is like not terrible to play if your deck is like also making crystals. He can search himself too, which is kind of cool. And you can search for the other Weiss so that when they remove this one, then you can play the actually good one.
Yeah, I still think that's a bit of a stretch, personally.
I think the space in those decks is too tight for it, but it's the same type of idea as the Firewater Ferris and Raffia Control.
Yeah.
I can see this being used in like maybe like a DFF ice deck with like the Noctis and the Terror, because the Terror comes in. Well, you play Weiss, you play the Terror. Then the Terror generates the crystal because the Weiss is on the field because it's a DFF character. But I think that it's too slow for what Ice currently has.
It's also when it enters, you have to pay the crystal, not when it attacks.
Oh, okay,
so
then.
you have to use it on entry, which means doing it that way means you lose the trigger.
Yeah, so yeah, no, it wouldn't work that way. Anyway.
The only thing that makes this card remotely playable is that Narrow is a really obnoxious card.
Yeah. I love that, Nero.
Yeah, it doesn't take over the other Weiss.
Yeah.
We'll move on. 2 cost Amo Backup. Dull, put Amo into the break zone. Your opponent removes all their hand from the game, face down. Your opponent can look at the removed cards at any time. At the end of the turn, your opponent adds them back to their hand. You can only use this ability once during your turn. You can only use this ability during your turn. I love this card. Telling your opponent to not have a hand for a turn. It stops summons, or it doesn't stop them. They have to use it immediately. Force your opponents to use their summons on your terms, getting rid of their hand, which a lot of really prevalent cards use. Lightning, Squall. It reminds me of a similar card that was considered broken in Magic the Gathering. It was a 0 cost look at your opponent's hand. All they did was look at your hand, but it costs you 2 life. Taxian Probe. because you can look at your opponent's hand, see what they have, and then plan around it. And this just basically goes, I know you're empty, I get to have my fun this turn. I either win off it, or I've done enough setup that you can't interact with. And the fact that they get their stuff back on, it says they return it at, let me just double check the wording. At the end of your turn, not at the start of your turn, at the end of your turn. So it happens midway through the end of turn phase, which means any end of turn effects, you can trigger them in the order you want besides the start ones, and the start ones go first. Which I think they've worded it intentionally to interact in that manner. So even if you get ice cards...
This doesn't cause a stack. It's just at the end of the turn, after all of the end phase happens, they get...
Yeah, but if you got a card like Lastwell...
They will not have to discard if you do this with the Lastwell that have a 9 attack.
I thought you choose the order of it.
No, at the end of the turn, it means it does not say in the end phase your opponent gets the cards back. It just says at the end of the turn, after everything resolves, they get these before they start.
So it happens at the cleanup, essentially.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, okay. I thought when they said at the end of turn, it refers to the end of turn phase.
No. It would say in the end phase.
Okay, so you do all that triggers first. Okay, so they've done it that way then, which would
I'd
still
sure.
argue.
I could double check the wording on Lastwell, but I don't think that it works that way.
Well, either way, if they have done it in that, it's intentional wording to do that intent versus the other intent. So I still think it's intentional wording to, be very specific with this card. But yeah, I love this card. I think it's amazing. I really love it. It should, I feel, go into almost every ice deck that can feasibly run it.
And maybe it can work that way. I don't know. I'd have to check the rulings on when that returns. I would imagine it, because Garland's returned, I don't think causes a stack to happen. I could be wrong. I would think this is more like a Garland than a Lastwell, where there's an auto that triggers.
No, Lastwell says at the end of each of your turns.
Yeah, I'm saying Lastwell's worded the same way.
Yeah, so I think it does. Yeah, we'll find out over time.
Here's the problem and why I don't think they'll make it work that way. If you have something that triggers every time an auto triggers, you could pay to theoretically cancel this, you could rip your opponent's high hand and pay it back to them, which does not sound like the thing you want.
Oh, that's...
Hypothetically, let's say Ishtola says, when an auto is triggered, you may sacrifice Ishtola when you do so. Then Ishtola would go on the stack every single time. And
yeah.
you could theoretically block them out of getting their hand back, which is why I don't think they would word this as something you can cancel, potentially.
Alright, so maybe they just misuse the wording and its intent is to be at cleanup?
Could be. This is the Twitter question, basically, at that point.
Yeah, this might actually be a Twitter question. If you're watching this on the VOD, please leave a message below if you know what the answer is, or a link to the Twitter. But yeah, I was fairly sure it interacts at the end step like everything else, because it's worded the same, or I was sure it was worded the same, yeah, that at the end of the turn. So my intent was that, yeah, if you have something like Lastwell trigger, you go, cool, I'm going to stack it that AMO resolves before the Lastwell, AMO you get your hand back, Lastwell triggers, discard a card. That's the way I interpreted it.
I interpreted it as just before you pass your opponent,
yeah.
Their hand back, yeah.
Yeah, resolve end step, clean up, get your hand back, move immediately to the next phase.
And I could technically see either of those existing.
I agree. That's why I didn't disagree with you, because it's yeah, that makes sense to me as well. It both got the logic behind it, but it's just something that we might need a clarification on.
Yeah, I don't love this card. I mean, it's fine. I don't know what really plays this. If it is going to be played, it's either to enable the 16 Squall Legend, that you can guarantee your opponent has no cards in hand without playing a bunch of discard, or it you're doing a combo deck that is going to kill them this turn, and you just want to guarantee they can't Amaterasu your combo.
Which I think is valid. I think that's very that's a big ability to have.
I mean, there's nothing in the game that would do this currently. The closest would be the Black Waltz infinite combo, but even that would still they get their hand back and do a theory afterwards. Or the Tilica loop stuff. The Tilica loop can't crack a backup in the middle of that loop most of the time and doesn't have time to play a card. So it would have to be a much cheaper Infinite Loop, and if an Infinite Loop like that existed, I cannot imagine they wouldn't just emergency ban it.
Maceyy, what do you think?
I think it's really good with the Opus 16 Squall and the Anima that's from this set. But realistically, other than that, it depends on how that wording is at the end. We don't know yet.
I'm not as big on it with Anima, just because if you have cards in hand, like Anima is going to be so obnoxious because you're going to have 2 cards in hand in a full frozen field. Like you can't do anything with that usually. But if you get 5 cards back and you draw 2, you can go to 7. Like you're not going to die to them, right? In the same way. Yeah. So like even like the Anima stuff, like you're just telegraphing, you break your own backup and discard your entire hand to dull freeze them. I would never do that. That does not sound good.
Yeah, I think this card's just basically going to be used as a like a final kill, like just to make sure you have the win. But
it is searchable off of Emina, which is nice. But I feel like there's just better, like you could search a bunch of stuff off of Emina. Is this ever the card I would get off Emina versus the Class Mogul or Edward that compare with Xenos, for instance, or Arcanist, so I can't take damage and stall the game out, right?
Or what's it called? The one that both players discard a card.
Or even something like the Armor, like the free backups, right? Like, where is the search that's like, no, this is going to be the card I need right now, versus actually, I would like to get a backup that's going to do things guaranteed in the next couple turns.
Alright, well, hopefully we'll get some clarification on that wording, but I still think
yeah, I'm going to send that tweet right now.
Yeah. And speaking of the Anima, Icon of Icons, 5 cost forward 9k. When Anima, Icon of Icons enters the field, if both you and your opponent have no cards in hand, dull and freeze all characters opponent controls. I actually love the way this card reads, but I just don't see it being played or working. I do love the effect just as the effect. I feel like this card comes down, you're going for the win. I don't feel this is a card you play, then wait a couple of turns. You play this, dull freeze their forwards, go in for the lethal swing in ice. My problem I've always had with ice is I feel it's an aggro color right now, and having 5 costs 9Ks, there's already Physalis, which is a 5 cost 9K that's already in the deck. I feel that's you only have 1 slot for that, and having multiple big stuff, like when we had that 7 cost from last set, I wasn't too sure about that, and yeah, it feels like they're trying to make ice a control color again, but it's not really working. What do you guys think?
I hate this card. It's absurd.
Bad or good?
Absurd good. Right now in Japan, they literally just had a mono ice aggro deck that basically got second place and nearly won. This slots into that as like it's CP if you need it, but it also just ends the game if your opponent is forced to, like when you play against ice, you're forced to go to a low hand size anyway, just to deal with what they're doing. You know, they're forcing you to discard, they're playing forwards that are attacking your hand, blah 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 blah. You know, you Shantoto. This just punishes you for the counterplay you have down to the point where it's like they literally have a card that says skip your next turn. I think this card is just absolutely broken. I hate this card. I hate those decks that play that. They're like, I hate those like ice aggro decks too. So like, it buffs one of my least favorite decks in the game to an absurd degree.
I agree. Anything that makes you not be able to play the game just shouldn't be in the game.
Well, maybe I'm a scumbag then. I'll be honest. I hated the old Thaumaturge Gesper thing. I hated that. It's why when I play ice, I tend to focus on dull and freeze because I love that option. I hate discard, but I don't know. I want this card to work, but yeah, it comes down to that question of is it really playing the game or is it not playing the game, which I do agree with you guys with.
The problem is, if you're only focusing on dull freezing, your opponent isn't going to have a low enough hand size to do this. So this really only fits in stuff like I play turn 1, Lufenian, Argath, Laswell. Good luck, idiot. You know, okay, the next turn I top deck 2, I'm gonna play like a Surgus, I'm gonna punch you again, you're gonna discard again. So then you discarded 3 cards in 2 turns.
Yeah.
When I have 5 cards in hand, maybe you do something to try to stabilize. Now I've dropped Anima on Dull Freeze, everything you built towards and the game is over. So yeah.
And I feel like the way you have to look at cards is, yes, you enjoy playing the Dull Freeze variant of the ice stuff, but what's the correct deck to play? It's the one, if you're there to win, it's the one to strip your opponent of resources rather than Dull and Freeze.
I am talking from a more fun perspective. Our 2-cost Shiva summon, EX Burst, choose 1 forward, dull it and freeze it. During this turn, if it deals damage to a forward or a player, that damage becomes 0 instead. I think this is just another good Shiva to go into that Shiva deck. We haven't seen much of the Shiva deck recently. But the Man in Black Shiva deck I thought was really interesting and really strong. I don't know how it would work nowadays. Yeah, not much to say on this one. It's just another Shiva.
Yeah, good card. I think it's one of the better Shivas in print. Also does a lot of funny things, like it's sort of Amaterasu for some abilities. Like if you hit a Ferris with this, you basically Amaterasu the Cleave.
And it's an Amaterasu that works on the Ferris.
Yeah. Cyan, another one. Like you hit that, now they can't do the damage. If Susano ever comes back into the meta, Susano doesn't work under this. Yeah. If 6 ever comes back into the meta, you target a Sabin with this, and Sabin special does no damage. Like it's, I think the first mode is like the EX burst mode, and the second mode is like you can use it as an Amaterasu for any damage-based effect, effectively.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just a solid Shiva in play in the list.
I mean, the only downside of the card is that it is, you go -1 in a way when you cast it. Like you're going down on CP and a card in hand. Person that does not necessarily generate you value. You're just dull freezing a forward. So you need kind of like some other value outside of that. Whether that's because you're ending the game this turn or because you're not losing your field to some ability.
Yeah.
Good card.
Alright, we'll move on. This is very consecutive. 2-cost Shulk, forward 5k. When Shulk or a Job's Vets enters the field, gain a crystal. This effect will trigger only once per turn. Pay a crystal, Shulk gets plus 3k power until end of turn. I've said what I've pretty much said about the Vets when we talked about Vice. I feel this is the same thing. It's just something for limited, I guess, a synergy for limited. I can't see where Vets works. I can't see where this actually matters in crystal generation. And it's also in Ice, which I think is one of the weaker crystal colors, I would say.
I don't know about that. Ice generates crystals pretty well. You have Agrius, you have Waltrill, you have 2 standing unit back, or 3 standing unit backups as opposed to every other element which only has 2. Like if you wanted to generate crystals in Ice, it's one of the better elements to be able to do that.
But I feel the only real Ice user of crystals is the Shantotto, and outside of that, they're not really. Usually, Ice is making the crystals for another color.
I mean, that's also the problem. Crystals in general are kind of a strange mechanic to evaluate. I think this is one of the few of this Fates that's actually decent, just because this effect is never really that bad. The Warrior Light Forward that does this is actually pretty good, just doesn't see a ton of play because wind and crystals don't necessarily get along. The Cecil that does this for Cat 4 is pretty solid. It's just a matter of if this card ever finds a home that needs the crystals and is playing, like, because like really all you need for this is you need like this narrow and Weiss gets you 3 crystals potentially for, let's say, Lady Lilith.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's enough by itself, but I think that this is not the problem with the Svets package in this.
No, I don't think it's the problem. That's not what I was saying. But yeah, I still feel you're just pushing, like, you're just stretching there, hoping it works. I don't know. Besides Wind, as you said, I feel Wind is the weakest of the crystal colors. I think Ice is probably second.
I'm not even saying that like I'm hoping. I don't think that's even correct either. I just think
Sorry,
the card
I
itself is no, I don't mean it that way. Like just more so like the card itself is independently fine. The package's intended support is not very strong. There are still sets that are playable, and this is playable. So if crystals ever become a thing that you really want in Ice, you absolutely can play this card. And I even think that like if you just need 3, like I said, Shelf Narrow Weiss gives you 3 crystals if you play them on separate turns. Shelf doesn't die. And she is kind of self-protecting because she can spend the crystal she generates to become an 8-kit. So I don't think this card is bad. I don't think any other skits from this set are likely to have any competitive merit whatsoever. But this card is not bad.
Maceyy?
At least it generates the crystal that it can use, unlike the Tifa.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think for a 2-drop possible 8k, I don't think there's much to complain about it. And you can use the crystal for like that stupid card we got in 21, the Astos, the 3 crystals, double forward component controls, deal on 9k. It just ramps out the removal for that, but yeah, other than that,
Alright, we'll
just
move on.
this card.
Forecast Jurgen, forward 8k. When Jurgen is from field into the break zone, select one of the 2 following actions. Choose 1 dial forward, break it, or your opponent discards 2 cards. I like the way this reads. I like the body. I like the cost. It's just, it requires itself to die to get the value you want off it. Otherwise, it's just a vanilla card. It's a late investment, which this game is really notoriously not good at utilizing. Everything needs to be more instantaneous. You need to get your investment immediately as you're playing the card, or else you're just paying 4 CP for a body. I would like to do something with this card, but I also feel it's just going to be too slow. I do feel it's a good anti to wall, because obviously if they dull wall to do the 5k ping, this dies, you kill it, but that's a very, very, very big stretch on my part, I'm going to say. What about you guys?
It's pretty hard to make a knight bad enough to not see play, and they managed to do it here.
Yeah, I even forgot it was a knight, you're right. I didn't even count that.
Yeah. It's kind of funny you can magic pop this into the other Jegrin, but I don't think even Knights is not doing magic pop shenanigans.
Yeah. Like I said, any situation I see where this is good is just a stretch in my mind.
It's not playable in Knights, and I don't think it's playable in Ice, so...
He does one thing right. He discards for last well. Alright, we'll move on. 2 cost Jill Nabat backup. 2 ice dull. Put 1 job Psycom into the break zone. Choose 1 dull forward, break it. Just job Psycoms I'm having trouble to evaluate right now personally. I like a lot of the synergy we've got with them. I just feel it's synergy that doesn't really go anywhere. But I can also see someone pulling a Psycom deck or a Psycom X deck out of nowhere. And the fact that this can either sacrifice itself to do its effect or sacrifice something else and then repeat the process. But compared to a lot of other cards that do the same thing for cheaper, Ice has got that restriction again where its removal is at a heavier cost than any other color. What do you guys think?
Is this really a card? Like,
yeah,
I've got FF decks up, and I typed in job Psycom. There are 3 different characters you can use, and all of them are backups, except for the one named Nabat. Like, I don't think that this card will see play, and if you're going to run Jill Nabat, you're gonna run the 3-drop forward that has the EX burst to go look for a job Psycom.
It's cute that you could, in theory, run the backups, like the Rigdia, and sacrifice it instead of Jill, and you could do Jill the next turn.
Yeah.
You're not happy to do that even like at this cost though. So it's a card mostly designed for limited. They kind of gave it a fun alternative thing you could do if you're.
And it's still
really
3 to
cheap on
4.
backup.
It's still 3 to 4 backups to do it, and they have to be a dull forward. Again, just the cost is too much.
Yeah, and the other 2 Psycon backups are either in water or lightning, so that also hurts.
Yeah, we'll leave that in the pile. 3 cost Cecil Forward 9k. When Cecil enters the field, discard 1 card. When Cecil enters the field, you may receive 1 point of damage. When you do so, choose 2 characters, dull them, and freeze them. Damage 5, Dark Flame Special. That's 1 effect. Deal 10k damage to all the forwards opponent controls. Cecil deals you a point of damage. I just think this thing is way too expensive for what it does. I mean, I know Ice likes this sort of thing, but I also feel it doesn't. I really don't like this card. I feel it's just a card. Yeah, I can't think of any use for it.
There's the copium usage for this card, and then there's the realistic usage, which is it's worse than Vincent 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, it's just there, and I don't like it.
The copium thing you can do is the Orin that like lets you redirect damage to him. If you're in a Fire Ice deck, you could play this, and then you could Dark Flame over and over again, potentially, because then you can redirect the damage to the Orin. So you're like drawing a bunch of cards, but you also then have to get to damage 5. Yeah, this card is... I don't know why they think this is a legend in the year of our Lord 2024.
It's a legend. Oh, I hate it more now. I hate it more.
The art's amazing.
Yeah.
It isn't a mono.
Please don't make this a legacy in 4 sets.
Alright, we'll move on. I think we're pretty agreed on that. 4 cost Xenos. When Xenos enters the field, choose up to 2 forwards in your opponent's break zone, remove them from the game. I do like that it says up to. When a card in your opponent's break zone leaves the break zone, your opponent discards 1 card. This effect will only trigger once per turn, 7k forward. I'm really hot for this card because it's not when the card is exiled, it's when the card leaves play. So LB triggers off this. Returning summons from bin to anywhere, to exile or to hand, triggers off this. Recurring a forward from bin. So much stuff triggers this. It punishes them for doing a lot of the effects that we're seeing in the meta right now. I really love this Xenos. This is something I want to use. I want to try and make work. It's CAD 14, I believe, which I think is relevant. I really like this card.
I don't think Cat 14 is relevant with Ice.
No, but I don't know. I just think it's still a relevant category.
It could be relevant in the future. This thing is kind of hilarious. Obviously, it does that with the discard, but there's also some fun stuff with Edward, the backup. Dolo Edward, rip a card from the break zone, make them discard. Kadaj forces this every single turn. The end of your opponent's turn, Kadaj comes in, rips 2 things from the break zone, they discard again.
Yeah, I love the way this is worded. I think this is something Ice really, really needed. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, hits, limit breaks. There's fun stuff with like 2 Chapel forwards, like the players add a card from their break zone and discard. This would make them discard 2. Which could be fun. I mean, all this assumes he sticks around, which is why I think like the Edward and the Kadaj are the most like impactful things if you force them in your opponent's turn. It's also just hard to make your opponent discard on their turn in general.
Yeah, because it's once per turn, not once per turn during your turn.
Yep.
Alright, that's a really good card. 3 costs Sarah. When Sarah enters the field, select one of the 2 following actions. If you control a job commando, select up to 2 of the 2 following actions. Choose 1 character, dull, and freeze it. Your opponent discards a card. This was the one I was saying that I think I like better as a 3 cost backup over the standard unit for Gigawall. Having the options is really good. Having the choice, it does everything Ice does. It's a 3-cost backup, which I know is a little bit much because everything's on the 2 spectrum now, and it's not searchable with Edna or whatever the card's called. I still like this one. I still rate it, but I don't think it'll see much besides some very, very heavy ice control or something that's more focused on the dull and freeze. But I like the fact that this gives you the choice of which option you want to do. I don't think you'll ever see the rare chance of the Commando and this, but I don't know. We've had Cat 13 come through before. It might come through again. What about you guys?
I think this is just worse than the Scholar for the most part. It's not multiplayable. It's like fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just there's other things I'd rather be doing. It is nice if you go second. You can go like play a backup and play this, and you have 5 cards in hand, and you've still done something on curve. If you're like playing an ice control deck and not wanting to like just play a bunch of cards on, you know, to do things. If you play like a 2 CP backup into a backup that draws a card, going second, you have 6 in hand. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I really feel Ice's backups are really restricted to a certain ones at the moment.
I mean, the biggest thing is you just don't want to play ice backups at the moment because ice doesn't have the removal to enable it.
Maceyy?
It's a backup. Like I don't know what else to say. Like it could work if you're gonna try something like Lightning Ice 13, but I don't know if there's enough ice to support that at the moment.
I mean, the Lightning 13 cards don't care about 13 backups. It's like there's some wind cards that do and some fire cards that do. None of the ice ones and none of the Lightning ones care about 13 backups. So
yeah, I was more thinking like you play this, then you play the starter deck null, and then you get because you got to play the starter deck null, then play this, and then you get both effects. But that's the only time you really see null in play at the moment.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think the Job Commando thing is not relevant at all. I just think it's just good to have the 2 options, like because I'm a big fan of charms and modules, but that's just me. And I could be just getting dazzled by that with this, that it's a module, but you know, just maybe a terrible one, or probably is a terrible one.
it's a common.
Yeah. Skip the soldier candidates because we've gone through them already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
2-cost Stratos, forward 8k. You can only cast Stratos if your opponent has 2 cards or less in their hand. Brave. Draws itself damage by your opponent, summons or abilities, damage becomes 0. It's just a body, doesn't really give you any value. It's a cool body, but I think that Ice has better options. I don't know if being Kingsglaive or 15 will matter because wrong colors. But yeah, I can't see anything for this card at the moment.
I don't think he's horrible. I don't
think he's horrible either, but just
I will say it's funny. I don't know 15 lore very well, but apparently they forgot to put a line of text on this card.
Oh.
This should not be playable at the same time as Backup.
He's the same character. Well, they've broken that for WoF characters because of how limited the character count is, but
No. WoF characters canonically are not the original version of those characters. That's a canon.
Masked Woman and Huin are the same.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. They've done it specifically because there's not enough variation in unique WoF characters.
Oh, huh.
That's right. He is Glauker, isn't he?
Yeah, he is Glauker. Yeah. So
yeah, I feel like
it might have been
intentional. You can do the Kingslave now, though. Like, I feel like you can run now a Kingslave deck if you do run the Lightning Ice, because you can run Glauker in him.
You can cheat. I'm allowed to cheat because the game says I can. But yeah, I think anything else you want to add to that, Maceyy, or?
I think it's in the wrong colors.
Yeah.
15's primarily wind and earth, and then you just and lightning at this point with the Kingslave.
I mean, Kingslave's in I mean, you could play Ice Lightning Kingsglaive. I could
Yeah.
see that being a thing. I don't
that's
think
the
it's
only thing I
likely
can
to,
think of.
but there's worse cards you could play.
I'll wait to see if Lance plays Lightning Ice Kingsglaive because he's the 15 dude.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. Alright, Knight reprint, we'll move on. Pacos Amethyst, 2-cost monster. This is part of the cycle. If you have 2 or more monsters, this becomes an 8k. And when it's chosen by your opponent summons abilities, your opponent discards 1 card. I think this is one of the monsters that, even though reads pretty well, just falls short. It's in ice, which isn't really the monster color. I think this is just a limited.
It's not bad. I mean, it's Agrius.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. I just think it falls short of where what we want as a monster for the monster decks.
I mean, the biggest thing is that monster decks aren't going to play ice. But,
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably like the 3rd best ice monster in the game right now. Behind, like, Biblos. Maybe you can make an argument for some of the plans, like Ice Bomb from last set.
I still think Krista's better than this. I would rate
Yeah.
Krista better than this.
But I mean, like, okay, I mean, but like, it's still in that same general ballpark, though.
No. It's a good monster. I just don't think it's what monster wants or needs right now.
Yeah, I mean, like the current monsters. But if you're playing monsters in ice, this isn't going to go in the monster pods if the monster players don't have a reason to go ice.
Yeah.
But if you are very heavy on Krista and Biblos, and maybe playing like plans or something, like the plan that can become forwards, this is probably in the next tier of ice monsters you could play in.
No, I can agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Lightning Ice monsters. I'm just, all I can think of is what color would pair well with ice, and normally it's lightning, and then lightning has the mirror. But
I mean, the problem with that is Mira I'll have a color.
the light one, the lightning.
The lightning one.
Yeah, but you can play it in any deck. You can
Yeah,
play
that's
that
the
in
thing.
a
It's-
mono water deck.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that mirror
right.
sees more play in other colors than it sees in lightning.
Yeah, I played it in mono water.
But no, and I really like the art on this, to be honest. White Tiger LC Nimbus, 5-cost, 8k forward. Brave, the forwards with Brave other than White Tiger LC Nimbus you control cannot be chosen by your opponent's abilities. When White Tiger LC enters the field, you may search for 1 forward with Brave and add it to your hand. It's Brave support, but I don't think, that's a thing. I think this is just an interesting heroic. It's cool, it's got some cool ideas, but I don't think it fits anywhere particularly. It doesn't really do much ice stuff to feed the ice decks, and I think that's what lets it down. At least that's my take.
There's some cute stuff this does. You have the ability to give something Brave as a quick effect. You can make like things untargetable, like as you choose them. Like, so you have like this plus Ash. It's like really funny.
Well, that's so you'd probably be in Earth Ice then with the Mamodi.
Mamodi's only during your main phase. The only one that I can think of that's like really good with this is like the Ash forward, right?
Okay,
Like
yeah.
Brave 7k gives other Brave forwards 3k, and then you can dull it to give a forward Brave. You could, in theory, dull that to give any other forward you have Brave to make them untargetable on the stack. And the searches Jack, which searches Ash, like it's a deterministic chain, which is cool.
I can imagine this with Map, the limit break card, because it gives everything Brave, and then you can't have anything chosen. But it doesn't stop summons, so
Yeah, I mean, that's only Brave on your turn. Like,
yeah.
the biggest thing is like, how do you do this on your opponent's turn? So like, make your stuff untargetable. That's not already Brave.
Yeah, because you want to focus on the protection side, not the Brave side. But
Because like the big theoretical combo you can do that's like really funny is if you have this plus the Opus 16 wall on the field, then you can give the Opus 16 wall Brave on demand. Because then that makes this guy untargetable. And the Opus 16 wall then would be untargetable by abilities.
There's also technically the Earth Mat, the LB one, but again, that's during your turn, and it still gives you a lethal swing. But again, is there many Ice Earth out there?
Not that would play this.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. This is a deck on its own, and it could be a new interesting deck idea, but I don't think it's a thing right now. Move on.
I don't see why not.
Flan, monster, dull. Put Flan into the break zone, choose one forward, dull it. Ice, remove 3 Flans from the break zone from the game, choose one dull forward, break it. You can only use this ability during your main phase, and if Flan is in your break zone. I love this, it's cute, it's adorable. Flan deck is a hilarious deck. I just don't like the idea of running a deck that has like 16 Flans or whatever the count would be. I think it's very, very just cute. Maybe a draft deck. I've seen one good Flan deck out there, and that was maybe 3-4 metas ago. Maybe, but I think this is just a cute Flan.
Didn't Rob Barron play one?
That's the one I was thinking. That's the one
he played it last year though. He did pretty well with it at
But I don't think it ran ice, and to put ice into it would be the question. I did message him when this came out and said, "Are you baking cakes again?" But yeah, I don't think it would run it, or he could modify it to make it run it. He did do well with it, but I still felt it was a bit of a joke deck.
I think it's funny. It doesn't have to remove itself from the break zone from the game.
Yeah.
You can remove the 3 other Flans and leave this one in there.
So even maybe as a one-of, it could work.
Yeah, I think you'd be running way too many plans. Like, there's the plan that searches plans, which is like kind of cute. This gives you something to do with all the plans you search, if you don't want to actually play them because they're not amazing.
Yeah, and popping 4 Flans, or 2, we'll say 3 Flans, 2 of the other one of this one. Make them discard 2 cards, dull 1 forward, then exile those 3 to break that forward is interesting. But again, we're 3 for 1-ing. Oh, we're 3 for 3-ing actually, because they're discarding 2 cards. Huh.
I don't think it's bad. I also just don't like keep space for this anymore.
Yeah, but I'm saying this now. I am ready to be proven wrong on this, because we have seen it before.
Like, if you're in a self-mill deck that's somehow in ice and playing a bunch of plans, it is key that you can generate card advantage off your move with this. You kind of generate a third of his Lara every time you mill a plan.
Yeah. Lightning, 2-cost backup. At the beginning of your attack phase during each of your turns, choose one forward opponent controls. If you control 2 or more category 13 forwards, dull it. I think this just comes down to whether 13 is a deck or not in ice. If there is a 13 deck in ice, this is really good. If there isn't a deck in 13 ice, this doesn't do much. We also have enough other stuff that dulls and freezes, or just dulls. We got the snow, even though it's a 4-cost. I guess you could do them in tandem, but I just think this is a backup. It's just a backup.
2 thoughts. This thing is broken in title.
Title, yes.
I think the name Lightning is too valuable in any 13 deck to play this, but it is also a second Ice Earth backup engine now, because you can go Amidar and search Lightning.
Yeah.
And that deck already wants to play a bunch of backups and as few names as possible if they could. Like right now the deck's on 18 backups, you can go down to like 16 if you like Amidar Lightning.
I think it's a good card. I think that it has its possibilities to be good. It just depends on if we can get the Ice 13 deck going, or then it's just a 2-drop backup.
Alright. And full art and signature. 2-cost Lady Lilith, forward 5k. When Lady Lilith enters the field, you may pay 3 crystals. When you do so, choose one forward, you gain control of it. I like that this is one of the few permanent controls we have, but again, it's crystals, it's 3 crystals, it's in ice. This thing's easy to kill unless you have it out with the 3 crystals. and they have something worth stealing. Crystal side of me loves it, but the crystal side of me is also wrong all the time. What about you guys?
I think it's okay. I don't really like playing crystals, and this doesn't make me want to. Like, one of my least favorite legends of all time was the Pot of Darkness. That was like 2 crystals, choose a forward, remove it from the game. But there's a big difference between 3 CP to do that and 2 CP steal. To the point where I would actually be more interested in playing crystals to get this over Pot of Darkness.
Yeah.
I still think this is too hard to line up. I would have liked her better if she was, when she enters, gain a crystal and then pay 4 to take control of the forward. Because then there would be that kind of like a modalness to her where it's like either you generate a crystal with her when she enters, or you spend 3 crystals and then you take control of the forward.
Yeah, so you have more of that immediate return option.
You said the ability to do something with her until you have 3 crystals.
Yeah. Maceyy?
I don't think it's going to be that playable. I think that by the time you get 3 crystals, and if you've discarded one in any time before that, your opponent could probably see one coming, and nothing stopping them just holding the Ami, or just letting you take their forward and then board wiping the next turn anyway. Like, I think that it's too much of a liability card at that point.
Yeah.
Because you just hold the Ami for it. Oh, you got 3 crystals. Okay, I'll just hold Ami and wait till you use the crystals.
Yeah, it's not worded well. Alright, that's the end of Ice.